Welcome back to Tailored Healing TV. I am your host, Taylor DeClue, and today's conversation is something I've actually been looking forward to for a few months now. My guest today is someone whose work sits at the intersection of storytelling, technology, human perception, and the future of collective intelligence. She's often described as a storyteller from the future, not because she predicts what's coming, but because her work helps us all feel what's already forming beneath the surface. So I'm honored to welcome filmmaker, experienced designer, and futurist Karen Palmer. Welcome, Karen.
Oh, it's so wonderful to be here. Thank you for welcoming me, Taylor. I'm equally as excited to come into your universe and see what our collective intelligence, or see what it's going to come up with for your listeners.
Of course. So, Karen actually found my work on TikTok for those of you who have found me there at some point, if not on another platform, and was somehow impressed with all of the crazy decoding that I do that I translate into storytelling myself. And I was so happy to meet someone, a sister, in alignment with what is happening with our future, where we've already been, and where we're going right now. So, Karen, people often refer to you as a storyteller from the future, and it's how you refer to yourself. I'd love to begin there. When you hear the phrase, what does that mean to you personally?
I have to backtrack a little bit
Okay.
because if you're saying somehow impressed with what I saw, I was super impressed with what I saw of yours on TikTok. And I was like, wow, there's a sister who's very much aligned with me, but also got your own vibe and your own energy and your own lens. So, yeah, I was very excited when I kind of came across you and yeah, really excited to see how this can go. So, Storyteller from the Future is the title that when I came back from the future, I gave to myself so that people would be a signal for people to let them know that I've arrived. Not that there's anything overly special about me, but there's something overly special about all of us. And that sometimes we forget what that is. And that I am hopefully this kind of reminder, this signal in the darkness.
Was there a moment when you realized your work wasn't just responding to what was happening in the present, but sensing what was coming next for us?
Yeah, all my work from a child, I've always had this sense of moving very quickly through the present and always very focused on the future. And I started to feel this sense of a responsibility that I needed to use my work as this bridge to enable people to um, well, like I said, my title is Storyteller from the Future, and I've come back to enable people to survive what is to come through the power of storytelling. So use storytelling as that bridge for them. I don't even think I've answered your question. I just think I've gone in a little tiny circle.
No, we need the explanation. It helps. So it's for people who hear storyteller from the future, they never know exactly what that means. And I love that
Mhm.
you have so many different layers of what you do because it's not just an artist, it's not just simply a storyteller, but even a futurist in a sense, a time traveler, someone who understands different layers of this reality that we live in. So I think it's very necessary that you explain that for those who are new to a phrase like that and what that actually means. They want to know if you've gotten in a rocket ship and literally came here from the future. So,
Yeah, so just to expand on what you said and answer your question a bit more depth, is that Storyteller from the Future is my title in this time as my persona as an artist, as an immersive storytelling artist. So I create my immersive experiences through that lens to enable participants to experience the future today so they can understand their role in it. So I have a very specific agenda with entertainment as I used to work in the music industry and direct music videos and TV commercials. I would say in a different lifetime, like about 20 years ago. And I was like, wow. And there was a time where I made a music video and I worked with a stylist, and then it was like an urban black music in the UK. And then I started seeing some of the youths on the street, like in the clubs, wearing that same style that we developed. And I was like, wow, this is really, really influential. I really feel a responsibility to to do a lot more than activate imitation or or a certain type of messaging that's being imposed upon people. I would like to use media to activate your consciousness and your self-awareness. So as opposed to we become passive observers of media and their messages, conscious or subliminal, where the message is being impressed upon us, we as the participants, is that I wanted my media to be a feedback loop, a receptor to your subconscious state. So what that would mean is that you watch my films and the films branch in real time because the films watch you back using artificial intelligence and a web camera or something like that. And it would branch depending on your micro emotion or your eye gaze. So if you responded to the film with anger or fear or calm, the film will branch in real time depending on that emotional response. So what I say to people, what I kind of developed when I did my TED talk was that my films make you conscious of your subconscious behavior to the narrative that I've created, so that when you kind of come out of this imaginary narrative and then you go into this other narrative of the real world, it makes you aware of how you have impacted this reality and created it through your emotions so that you can become aware of your subconscious programming. That was quite a lot. I hope that made some of that made sense at least and didn't kind of lose some of your audience.
No, no, I love it. And I actually wanted to emphasize because I remember when I first started watching your TED Talk and looking into your work, you spoke about a little bit that I would like for you to talk about working with parkour and learning about psychology and how this kind of started to branch into your work. I think that's like one of the most important parts of the beginning of this work that I first was introduced to. So could you talk about that a little bit?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'll yeah, put it in context a bit. So I worked in the music industry and I was like, and I had a really cool life, really cool, like my nice convertible BMW, working with international artists like Beanie Man and Sizzler and Luciano. And but I got to the point where I was like, is this it? Like, is this party life? Is this like music hype? It's very superficial. It's very misogynistic. And I was like, is this it? And I was like, no, I don't think there's a lot more to what I should be doing with my talent than this. And I started to go on a journey within myself in terms of what I should be doing. And I was always into, I'm talking like 20 years ago, and I was always into like spirituality and health and nutrition and meditation and detoxing. And that was all, that was good for self-reflection. But then I was also into like physical movement a lot. And I got into parkour. Oh my God. That is, and I call parkour moving meditation because to me it is as deep a spirituality as I could connect with because it's a constant mirror to yourself. So an example is if you are doing parkour and you're doing like a jump and you're doing a jump on the floor, say it's just 3 feet or something, you do the jump. And then you learn to kind of do the jump higher. And then maybe you're doing something like a first story or maybe a second story high. And you're like, okay, well, if it's the same distance, then what's the problem? Because you can do the jump. Why does the fall impact the distance you can do? Because it then becomes psychological of, oh, well, if I fall or what if I haven't? But you can do it. So we learn techniques to move through fear and master our fear. So we learn through our body to master our mind. So in that case, I will probably go back to honing the jump on the floor and then gradually work myself up to the height. And another really good example of that is that one Sunday afternoon, I was training with my friend Yao, and I was doing a jump like that, where I was doing a jump on the floor, but I couldn't get much higher. And when I was doing the higher one, he said, what's the problem? What's the problem? He's French. He goes, what's the problem? What's the problem? That's not even French, but get the idea. And I said, well, I'm scared of falling. And he said to me, well, then let's practice falling for 30 minutes. So what we did is that we practiced just falling. And then I learned to fall. And then I realized, okay, on that ledge, if I kind of fell, how would I land? So I basically learned to land in a way which I wasn't controlled. But then after doing that, I wasn't scared of falling. So then when I did the jump, the first time I was a bit short, the second time I was a bit long, and the third time I made the jump, but I'd learned to master falling, which is kind of life, really, that often we're not really scared of the jump, we're scared of the fall. So if you can master the fall, you'll be confident enough to make the jump. So that was my whole parkour vibe. And then I wanted to integrate the process of moving through fear into a digital experience. And that became my initial digital experiments with with technology and film. And I made a series of parkour films. Um, and the most popular one that was like Sync Self and Sync Self 2, where I was using, as a participant, you would watch a film and you would have an EEG headset on and it would monitor your brain waves. So if you were focused in the area of your brain to do a focus, the character in the film would make the jump. A bit like a video game, but with your brain. A magazine said your brain was a joystick. And if you weren't focused when you watched the film, the EEG headset would send a signal to the film and you wouldn't make the jump. So that was my first kind of exploration into digital and transformation, um, inspired by the philosophy of parkour.
This is how I feel like you are truly just the sister that I never met I've shared this with my audience once or twice before. In 2018, I took a work trip to Las Vegas and off of just a whim, I decided to go skydiving. And I had nobody there with me at all. Most of the people there, because it's Las Vegas, so a lot of them were couples or brother groups or people going together. And I was all by myself. And I decided to do that. And that was my first intro into releasing and getting used to falling in life. And it was so dramatic because I wrote like a goodbye letter just in case to my parents because they had
Oh
never trusted
God.
me to do it. But the fact that I now have that story, as you're telling this, I'm going back to what that feels like. And now that you are turning this into an immersive experience to teach people about their minds, but also the power and evolution of how they're used, I think is so wonderful. And I'm gonna post some clips of parkour too, so you all are familiar with what it is if you'd ever like to try it. Um, but yes, thank you for sharing that. You definitely sparked a memory in me again, remembering what that felt like for the first time. So thank you.
Um, that's super dramatic. You wrote the letter to your family.
I was dramatic, but you're
But
falling out of the sky voluntarily, so you have to prepare just in
that
case.
it's dramatic, but also responsible at the same time. So I'm super, super impressed that you, because when I do parkour, I'm like, oh shit, I might break my leg, but you're just like dead. So I don't know if I would like ever, you've taken it way further than me, sis. Like, I don't know if I would have looked death in the face. But
This was prior to children too, so they weren't around at the time. I was making riskier decisions at that time, but it has followed with life decisions, so definitely.
Oh, well done.
Thank you. So, in your research and filmmaking, you've addressed how bias gets encoded into systems, especially through stories and technology. What do you see as a narrative quietly shaping behavior in ways that most people do not consciously notice right now?
Oh my God, what a hardcore, great question. Can you just repeat it again?
Okay, so in your research and filmmaking, you've talked about how bias gets encoded. So, where do you see narratives quietly being shaped in behavior today in ways that we may not realize?
Ah, okay. So just for context as well, is that from 2016 to 2023, I was very, very focused on bias in AI. I was doing an AI residency in ThoughtWorks a technology company in New York from 2016 to about 2018. I did a lot of deep research on that. And then I actually worked with the technologists in a technology company to create our own data sets. And we used that within the experiences which I created to put, and I worked with NYU, uh, New York, to potentially enable people to use a immersive experience to reflect, mirror back to them their own implicit bias. So that was a really big, big chapter of my AI journey. Bias in technology or bias in life. Um, what's coming down on us, raining down on us through the system of, particularly in America now, of like the state and us, the people. I don't know if I'd call it bias or if it's just a belief, but I don't know. I'm going to use, I don't know if it's the right example, but I'm going to just use it and then maybe I'll go back and answer your question again. That the term civil servant means that the government officials are our servants. They're supposed to work for us. But right now, there seems to be this belief that we are subservient to the government. And it doesn't even matter which government, it's every government. And that government is also alarmingly, for the past 5, 10 years, increasingly becoming more and more aligned with big tech. And those interests are coming together. And we are seen as just data points to be manipulated. And if people are more interested in what that looks like, they could research films like documentaries like Cambridge Analytics. What was the name of that film that the lady did? It's on Netflix. Carol, I can't remember her surname, but she's for The Guardian. She was a big part of that documentary. But this and about how they use data to swing elections all over the world. And that is something that we need to change that narrative. Like they're kind of, the system is expecting that to happen. They're expecting us to be manipulated and influenced. And then they're just using technology at a high level to do that. So I don't know if that's truly answered your question. Um, but uh, yeah, to tell me, I don't think that's answered your question.
It did, and I actually want to go back a little bit. So one of the first phrases you gave me that I looked up was what consensus gentium meant, which is we the people. So how did that inspire your work? That phrase, how did that come to you to decide to use that for the application as you were developing it?
So, so I'm getting a bit emotional, but all my work is about liberating our minds and using media to make us more aware of ourselves. I don't want anybody to, I don't think it's about fighting the system, even though I'm fighting the system. It's about being more self-aware of myself and my limitations. And like the monks, I saw a video of the monks and they were talking to somebody, the ones that's going through America right now.
Yes. Mhm.
And they were saying to somebody, don't try and fight the world. Don't find the peace in yourself first. And I was like, yeah, that's what my work is about. It's about yourself. We can always look at the governments and the people in charge and say them, but it's like, hold on a second, what about we, the people? What about me as an individual? What about us as a community? And so I've always been focused on the liberation of the individual as, and then after that community. So that title really represented where my psychology is at. Um, and I was always thinking about it. And normally I'm just down my little rabbit hole and I don't really do a lot of things. But I was listening to some videos on YouTube of Philip K. Dick, who I'm in love with him
Electric
because I
dreams,
often,
I love it.
oh my God. And I often think if he was around today, he would be an immersive artist because at the time, your listeners might not know of him, he's like an amazing sci-fi author, and he's the writer of Minority Report. And
Do androids dream of electric sheep?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And But he was a writer, a short story writer, because everybody, and I think it was in newspapers as well, because everybody's reading newspapers or short stories and books. He did columns. So I often think, wow, and he really inspires me a lot because he talks about storytelling as conscious, kind of pricking consciousness and the divide between this reality and another reality. And he did a talk in France and he used that phrase. And I was like, yes, that's exactly where I'm at. And I wasn't sure about using it for my film, but my XR film, it was really personified that. And I was like, well, I'll use it. And then people look it up like yourself and they'll understand that's Latin. And sometimes, Latin can kind of abbreviate very complex themes because it's that type of language, right? You're a code breaker. It's kind of designed for that. So yes, on the short story, I was influenced by Philip K. Dick, but it took me like maybe 5 years to get to that because as an artist, as you know, we're constantly evolving and we're constantly feeling well, I am feeling my way forward. And then things come to you or words or terminology or vocab or you're exposed to things. And so that was really important for me to kind of label that experience, that title.
I love that you brought up
Really
Philip K.
believes it.
Dick, mostly because I never saw myself as a science fiction kind of woman. And it was only when my consciousness really started to develop over time that the ideas of futurism started to become very fascinating to me because, it was been around in TV and the media forever, but I was so immersed in the present that at one point I wasn't imagining the future. And when I started to read his work, I even saw the reinterpretation of his work on an Amazon Prime show. And I started to watch some of the episodes. The reality that was being shown did not feel like something I didn't know. It was something that was just being activated again. And so I definitely acknowledge everything that you're saying about him as well, which draws me into how Consensus Gentium has now evolved into your new work that is being featured. So, your current work with Ascended Intelligence is premiering at South by Southwest. Congratulations again. Um,
Thank you. Thank you.
it feels like a culmination of everything you've been exploring so far. So, how does it truly, in your opinion, build on to what you've done? I know you mentioned not being in a fight. And I wanted to give you a chance to speak first, but as soon as you said that, I'm not really hearing the word navigating. It's kind of like in the Matrix films, how they are on the Nebuchadnezzar. But we view the ships as a personal vehicle. It's the body. We're time traveling through our minds using the physical vessel. So, how does your work now evolve? What you used with psychology and parkour in order to develop your app, how is Ascended Intelligence graduating from that first idea into what you're doing now?
Oh, when you so give me a question, I'm listening to you, and I've got three answers popping. So I go to the back and I go to the front. So as you said, consensus gentium, if everyone believes it, it must be true, is a comment on perception and a perception of society. So people I would associate that with a terminology, a phrase like an example, like at a time, at one time, everybody thought the earth was flat. So everybody thought it, so it must be true. Now, most people think the earth is round. So everybody thinks that it must be true. So these things they're not fixed in fact. They're based in perception of reality, which is fluid, as is our identity, right? So it was just a reminder of people that at the moment, it's like I feel we're 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 being on a mass level manipulated, lied to, exploited, everything. And what we're told to be our reality on so many different levels, whether it's science or history, it's just not most probably the case. But because people believe it, it must be true. So my consensus gentium is the experience on the App Store, um, the immersive experience people can download, is about a future of bias tech and surveillance, and where big tech and the government are together. And we are judged and given more of our like human rights depending on our compliance or dissidence. So a lot of that is about, let me just close this. A lot of that is about perception. And I'm kind of through my immersive experiences, like waking people up gently, just helping them rub their eyes, that this perception that you think you're looking into is not. And you're kind of being like led like a lamb to the slaughter in a way. And I just need you to wake up. So where that brings me to now is actually ascended intelligence is Consensus Gentium Part 2. It's a trilogy in a way, but it was a bit too long a title. Consensus Gentium 2 Ascended Intelligence. I guess made it Ascended Intelligence. So as I said, I spent like 8 years looking at bias in tech. And then 2023, yeah, I was at South by Southwest. I exhibited it as part of the XR and won the XR Jury Award, which is amazing because that's one of the most high caliber awards for immersive experiences in the world. And after that, I said, I kind of don't want to give any more warnings. I actually want to give solutions or at least direct us in that direction. So as opposed to shedding a light on all the bad things that are happening, that's over now. I need to inspire. This is why I came back a storyteller from the future, alternative systems that we can start to imagine. So I'll just give you a couple of little stories here. Let's close this off. A couple of little stories here is that when I do these thing, I do these think and action tanks called Hack the Future Labs, which I bring together interdisciplinary experts from the fields of academia. So it might have Ruha Benjamin, who's an expert in bias in AI and a teacher at Princeton, Stanford or Princeton. And then I might have activists and I may have philosophers, behavioral psychologists, neuroscientists, TED speakers. Um, and when I say activists, I've got people from Taiwan, I've got data workers from Kenya, I've got activists from the Congo, all different experts coming together. And I did one of these labs in Netherlands during COVID. And a philosopher and my good friend Kumbale, who's an activist from the Congo, the philosopher, a white guy in the Netherlands, a Kambale in Africa, both together, like almost started ending each other's sentences because they were getting excited with this analogy because they were talking about how if we're going to change a current system, like change a system that the state is suppressing us with, we need to have what Kambale said is that we need to have an alternative in place before we destroy that system. And then the philosopher in from Netherlands said, from the New Institute, Karlsruhe said, it's like Marie Antoinette. When the French had a revolution and they cut off the monarchy's head, literally, they didn't have an alternative. So then they replaced it with the state. And that was another system of oppression. So what I'm doing now is that I'm not just an artist, I'm a systems architect. I'm here to inspire alternative systems for us to imagine that we can live with. And because we're living in a technological age, that is tech, but tech is a reflection of society. So it's really important for us to go one step back and imagine the type of world we'd like to live in and then build the infrastructure and systems and technology to make that possible.
I really enjoy that analogy mostly because when I think about the risk that are taken when people are ready to engage with getting rid of something old, but then not necessarily prepared with strategy about what comes after. I think that there's so much natural rebellion towards these systems that have been made that it's hard to hold and balance emotion with what we feel about what's been done while also equally having the mindset to execute something different. So I believe your work is providing insight into that so that people can not view everything and seeing all red, being able to hold things kind of in a balanced perspective to help create and evolve with the future as it's moving forward rather than being guided by it. It's like co-creating a bit. What does sovereignty look like for individuals inside of algorithmic systems to you?
Oh God, what a hardcore question. Because if I get to that beautiful question, I just wanted to comment that. So I've developed these immersive experiences, or the app that you can download, because media, storytelling, digital is a very easy to access environment and journey and experience. So that, if when I talked about bias in AI, for people who weren't like a regular, like Sunday Times reader, um, I enabled them to experience these things on a visceral level. So I had the project, my film on Perception IO, where it was set in the future of um, biased police state, but you're training it. And it would be a huge projection, and there will be um, a black and white character, and how you responded with your micro expressions would be read by the AI, and then the film will branch depending. So as a police officer, if you were aggressive and it was a black character, maybe the situation would escalate. And if you were calm, it would de-escalate, and people would kind of get a mirror back to their own potential implicit bias. So my experiences are very gentle. They're very, let me just turn this off. They're very they're inquiring. They're very inquiring. And I've had people say to me, like I had a meeting with somebody, and the first half an hour of the meeting was really cool. And then the second half an hour, I was describing what I did, and they said, "Oh yeah, I did an experience like that in New York." And I said, "Yeah, that was my experience." And they go, "Oh my God, that really affected me." They started telling me they affected me, how much it affected them. And I said, "Actually, that's me." And they go, "I actually afterwards had to go get a cup of coffee and just sit down." Yeah, and go, wow, that's really revealed parts of myself that I wasn't even aware of. So it's I'm not here to judge. I'm here to create an environment, a mirror to you, so that we can kind of explore like your subconscious behavior, bias, moving through fear, weakness, so that we can evolve. So it's very much akin to what I would say modern mythology, where the media, well, not media, storytelling used to be a rites of passage. It was very much part of this evolution from being a boy to a man or a girl to a woman. And we don't have that. What do we got? Netflix and chill, right? So my work is very much akin to that spirit of transformation, but through storytelling. Now, to answer your question, just can you repeat it again about sovereignty?
What does it look like for individuals inside of systems that are essentially algorithms?
I will always go one step back. The because well, I'm associating systems and algorithms with tech, but I would go one step back because I don't know if that's directly what you meant, is that um, the system is a human system. Everything that is tech is human first. So sovereignty within the system, I would say that's nothing to do with tech, that's to do with mindset. So once we have a free mind, no system will be able to hold us. No algorithm will be able to hold us. No state will be able to hold us. But that sovereignty is freedom of freedom of mind, freedom of potential, freedom of choice, freedom from limitation. And that comes with knowledge of self. That comes with knowledge of self. That's why my work is all about understanding self more. It's not about following another leader, which there's going to have to be leaders, but it's about understanding yourself, your role. Because, say, for example, you or I, or your listener, maybe when they're having a disagreement with their spouse, that it turns into like an unnecessary escalating argument of raised voice. It's like, if you can't even like talk to your partner rationally and calmly and logically to resolve issues, how the hell are we gonna literally fight the system? We're totally going to be totally manipulated and triggered and exploited. They're going to know everything, and they're going to definitely know everything because they have all our data. So they're going to easily go, okay, yeah, this person is this, and We know how to, we also have their social media, so we know that, oh, the day that they were, say a woman's on her cycle, that she went to look at her ex-boyfriend's post because she was feeling a bit emotional. And then she went and bought some chocolate. Like maybe there's data points that they're going to put together that we could never connect together, right? So that they can come. So everything to do with tech, everything to do with algorithm sovereignty, it all comes back to the human being. It's nothing to do with tech. It's to do with knowledge of self. And every single religion that I know of, their source is that, whether it's Buddha, whether it's Gandhi, whether it's Jesus Christ, they all talk about this going to the desert or going to a space or deep meditation and solitude to have this knowledge of self. And through that, you can regain your personal sovereignty. Yeah.
I will just share this with Karen because I did do a more formal video on my TikTok talking about Consensus Gentium, the application. However, when I participated in it myself, I did get emotional. There were a few scenes, and I will not give it away because I think it's something everyone should experience for themselves. But when I integrated with some of the scenes, because you're engaging with something that looks realistic, you're here in this scene. I put myself in this scenario. What would this feel like if I couldn't communicate with a parent or get to them quick enough, or it required some sort of digital identity for me to have access? And just that thought would spike certain emotions in me, and it made me very self-aware of what was going on. So I invite anyone to try out this application because I think you'll learn something very poignant about the way that the world is being shaped, not to put you in a fear state, but as Karen said, more of a state of self awareness. And so, one final thing I'll say before we start to wrap up the conversation is that when I met
Oh no, it's too
Karen,
quick.
I know we have so much, and
Having so much fun, having so much fun. I didn't realize I just looked at the time.
I know.
Wow, you're a good
I'm so
host.
grateful for your time. When I met her, she was impressed with me, and then I started totally fangirling out because I it's very rare that I get to meet people in a shared framework. I've been somewhat of a bubble most of my life, observing, looking at the world around me, and only just now as I got into my 30s, getting comfortable, expressing myself and creating my own platform so that I can share and inspire others as well. But the more that she has spoken with me, I view her as a mirror, and not just a mirror of what I could become, but what I already am. And I hope that anyone listening also starts to develop these skills because it's so amazing when you see someone working with something as innovative as art and technology as a reflection of the human experience. But when you also see yourself in it, I think that's another point of self-elevation. So, Karen, thank you for your work and your insight. If you could leave us with one final thought, when it comes to the story that we're being invited to step in right now, what happens if we choose to engage consciously or unconsciously with the future?
When you say the story we're being invited to, do you mean by this reality?
Yes.
Um, a dog whistle. If somebody has a dog whistle and they blow it, we can't hear that whistle, but the dog can hear that whistle. And that's because it's in a different frequency. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist, it just means it's beyond our perception. There's no way on this planet that that is the only example there is of of a frequency and a reality beyond our perception. And it's really important for us to not be locked into this reality that you're given by this culture, this state, and the government. And I would also add, I don't mean to offend anybody, religion, okay? That um, any kind of doctrine that is out there has come from a man. And much of that is often going to be a white man from the West. And often that there it's not designed to benefit us. Okay. So I think it's really important for us to question everything and be super aware of every single thing that we're being told, whether it's about what's happening with America and Venezuela or Greenland or um, the Federal Reserve or whatever it, or tech, anything. The lens you have is through your source. So whether you're reading a paper, if you're on Instagram, if you're on TikTok, if you're on someone talking to you, just expand your perception of reality is absolutely crucial for the reality that you have because no two people experience the same reality and it's all down to perception. When I was doing my Hack the Future Labs, I was working with this TED speaker who's a neuroscientist, and I spoke to him about I want my work to shift people's perception of reality. And he said, no, you can't shift perception. All you can do is expand it, and then you include their perception in your perception. You don't jump and change, it just amplifies and expands. And that's what I would just urge everybody to do is exercise critical and cognitive thinking. You've really just got to think for yourself. There's no way around it. And even if you're talking to friends or you're talking to ChatGPT, be conscious of the questions that you answer to elicit the response you want, because sometimes it's not about the answers, about the questions that you're asking. Yeah, that's what I would say. Perception, challenge your own perception of reality.
Well, I believe anyone listening today, whether it's their first time hearing something like this or they've already been familiar, that is the wake up call for 2026. And I think a beautiful way to start the year. So, Karen, thank you for your work, for your insight, and for helping us navigate what's forming ahead, not with fear, but with awareness. And as for everyone watching, thank you for joining us on Tailored Healing TV. I hope to have Karen on again in the future, as she is a very busy woman doing exquisite and innovative things in the world that I cannot wait for you all to connect with. I'll share some things and links from her personal articles in the show notes. You can also follow her at Storyteller from the Future on Instagram and check out her wonderful work. So, Karen, thank you again so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. Also, as you said, I'm going to be at South by Southwest. It's just been announced yesterday. South by Southwest 2026 with Ascended Intelligence, the world premiere. And that Consensus Gentium is available for free to download on the App Store. And also to say that as storyteller from the future, I've come back to enable people to survive what is to come, but I did not come back alone. So if anybody feels that what I'm saying resonates with them, maybe they also came back with me. And this podcast is a signal to remind them of that. And if so, good luck on your path, and that hopefully we'll pass together on that path one day.
Absolutely. Thank you all for listening. Stay curious, stay sovereign, and I will see you in the next episode.